What's good, everybody? I'm the G with a PhD, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla Channel, the place where black men can freely express themselves. Straight up, no chaser. What's good, everybody? I'm the G with a PhD, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla Channel, the place where black men can express themselves freely. Straight up, no chaser. At this time, I would like to respond to those persons who have the following sentiment to express.
America is not a racist country.
But from the time Europeans arrived on American shores, the frontier became a shared space of vast clashing differences that led the U.S. government to authorize over 1,500 wars, attacks, and raids on American Indians, the most of any country in the world against its indigenous people.
America is not a racist country.
But by the close of the Indian Wars in the late 19th century, fewer than 238,000 indigenous people remained, a sharp decline from the estimated 5 million to 15 million living in North America when Columbus arrived in 1492.
America is not a racist country.
But black people were transported by the millions to the New World and were inducted into the terrible system of chattel slavery.
America is not a racist country.
But black people were regarded as 3/5 of a man in the United States Constitution.
America is not a racist country.
But after the Civil War and during Reconstruction, in an effort to get around laws passed by Congress, many southern states began to pass black codes. These were laws that prevented black people from voting, going to school, owning land, and even getting jobs.
America is not a racist country.
But under the presidency of Rutherford B. Hayes, as soon as federal troops were removed from the South, the state governments took back over and reversed all of the changes to equal rights that had been granted during Reconstruction.
America is not a racist country.
But starting in 1890, Southern Democrats began to pass state laws that took away the rights of African Americans. The racist laws became known as Jim Crow laws.
America is not a racist country.
But Jim Crow laws made it impossible for blacks to vote. And since they couldn't vote, they also couldn't serve on juries.
America is not a racist country.
But Jim Crow laws were laws that required racial segregation. So blacks couldn't go to the same schools, eat at the same restaurants, or go to the same hospital as white people. They couldn't drink from the same water fountains or use the same bathrooms or sit at the front of the bus.
America is not a racist country.
But in 1896, the United States Supreme Court ruled in a case called Plessy versus Ferguson that Jim Crow laws were legal. They said that having things be separate but equal was fine. In the South, everything was separate. But places like black schools and libraries got much less money and were not as good as places for whites. Things were separate but not equal.
America is not a racist country.
But in the 50s and 60s, black people had to form the civil rights movement in order to challenge white supremacy.
America is not a racist country.
But it wasn't until 1954 where the Supreme Court decision, Brown versus Board of Education, ended segregation once and for all after black people had protested peacefully while they were being beat up, hosed down, subjected to tear gassing, and having dogs sicked on them.
America is not a racist country.
But it wasn't until 1964 that the Civil Rights Act outlawed segregation in schools, public places, and jobs.
America is not a racist country.
But it wasn't until the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that black people actually had the right to vote.
America is not a racist country.
But it wasn't until 1968 that America passed the Fair Housing Act, which banned discrimination in housing.
America is not a racist country.
Even with the passing of the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and the Fair Housing Act, black Americans still have not achieved economic equality and still remain a socially disadvantaged group.
America is not a racist country.
But during the 2015-2016 school year, black students represented only 15% of total U.S. student enrollment, but they made up 35% of students suspended once, 44% of students suspended more than once, and 36% of students expelled. The U.S. Department of Education concluded that this disparity is not explained by more frequent or more serious misbehavior by students of color.
America is not a racist country.
But in New York City, 88% of police stops in 2018 involved black and Latinx people, while 10% involved white people. Of those stops, 70% were completely innocent.
America is not a racist country.
But in one U.S. survey, 15.8% of students reported experiencing race-based bullying or harassment. Research has found significant associations between racial bullying and negative mental and physical health in students.
America is not a racist country.
But from 2013 to 2017, white patients in the U.S. received better quality health care than about 34% of Hispanic patients, 40% of black patients, and 40% of Native American patients.
America is not a racist country.
But black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to experience a pregnancy-related death than white women, even at similar levels of income and education.
America is not a racist country.
But black Americans are more likely than white Americans to be arrested. Once arrested, they're more likely to be convicted. And once convicted, they are more likely to experience lengthy prison sentences.
America is not a racist country.
But black Americans and white Americans use drugs at similar rates, but black Americans are 6 times more likely to be arrested for it.
America is not a racist country.
But on average, black men in the U.S. receive sentences that are 19.1% longer than those of white men convicted of the same crimes.
America is not a racist country.
But in the U.S., black individuals are twice as likely to be unemployed than white individuals. Once employed, black individuals earn 25% less than their white counterparts.
America is not a racist country.
But one U.S. study found that job resumes with traditionally white-sounding names receive 50% more callbacks than those with traditionally black names.
America is not a racist country.
But in the U.S., black workers are less likely than white workers to be employed in a job that is consistent with their level of education.
America is not a racist country.
Well, at the present moment, it should be plain and apparent to see that yes, America is still a racist country. Thank you. How you doing?